Welcome back. We are dialed in for another installment of Inside Zone on the 104.5 The Zone Podcast Network. I'm Lucas Panzica coming to you from our Cumulus Nashville studios in downtown Nashville, a little over 2 miles away from where our next guest etched his name into both Titans and NFL history. But today's conversation is about a lot more than just football. Dr. Kevin Dyson joins us next on Inside Zone. Dr. Dyson, Kevin, thanks so much for being here, man. How you doing?
Absolutely. It's kind of bittersweet. You talk about being a few miles away from Adelphia, was what I was playing.
Yeah.
And then talk about tearing that joker down. It's kind of bittersweet coming down this way, looking at it now.
Got a few more years to be able to appreciate it.
Yeah.
But no, obviously, Titans legend. You hear him pre and post game on 104.5 The Zone each and every Titans game day, and the principal of Centennial High School with us today on Inside Zone. Did that ever stop being strange to you, being referred to as Dr. Dyson?
Yeah, it's still a little bit strange if I'm being honest. But you know what, man? With life comes growth, and it was one of those things for me. Never thought I'd ever accomplish. And I took it upon myself, man. And I tell people this all the time, all those same attributes and skills that I had as a ball player, I applied to education. I wish I had known that when I was a kid because it saved me a whole lot of issues, but I applied them same kind of skill sets that I already had in me and helped me pursue that doctorate, and here I am, man. But to be honest, man, it's kind of cool hearing it. That's when people say it, man, it's validation for all the hard work you put in from an academic standpoint.
Well, we'll get there, but we always like to start these at the beginning.
Yeah.
So we're going to go back to the 70s and 80s in Logan, 70s
Utah.
And
80s. Here you
go. Well, I know you're part of a football family. Obviously, your brother Andre played in the league, but football was not necessarily your first love, right?
Right. I was a basketball player. That was my thing, man. As a young man, single mom, I told her I was going to go to the NBA. I think I was in 6th grade. I told her I was going to go to the NBA. I was going to buy her house. You mentioned I was in Logan, Utah. That's where my folks met. I was born in Logan. My dad was a football player there, and I probably lived there a month or two before we moved to Las Vegas. And then parents split up and stayed in Vegas for a little while. They ended up eventually making it back way to Utah. And single mom, and going from apartment to apartment and things of that nature. You just want to be able to provide stability for your mother, who you saw working her tail off for you. So for me, the ultimate prize was to buy her home, something she didn't have to worry about. And so I told her one day, I boasted it. I said, I'm gonna go to the NBA and I'm gonna buy you a house. My favorite player was Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson. Those was my two favorites. And I was trying to emulate both of them. And, even though I'm 6'2", both of them are 6'6" and 6'9", but, that's besides the point. But, and so, that was the dream. And she humbly told me, get your education. That's more important. It's what's funny is I finally asked her about this literally last year, because she came home the next day and she had the statistical probabilities of making it in professional sports in each of the major sports in America, MLB, NHL, of course, NBA and NFL. And, I mean, the numbers were crazy, like 1 in a million, 1 in 2 million, and all that. And I finally asked her about a year ago. I said, where'd they get that, man? You talking about Providence. It was in the paper the next day. And she put it on the refrigerator, posted a copy of it on the refrigerator. And, to a kid, 11, 12-year-old kid, man, it's kind of discouraging. But knowing my mom now and having this conversation over the last 30-something years, that was to say, don't count your eggs before they hatch. There's a process. Do everything you can first. Take care of your education, because just in case, you just don't know. You got to have something else to fall back on. It wasn't she would discourage me from playing professional basketball. Lucky for me, I was athletic enough. It worked out for me, and I'm very thankful to Craig Hansen, C.K. Hansen. When I got to Clearfield, I went to visit my father in Vegas. I had been gone all summer, didn't do any of the football training. I had him for class, and he knew me from my junior high. He was the sophomore football coach, and he convinced me to come out and play. He said, if you don't like it, you don't have to play again. My first game, I had like a punt return, a kick return, 2 touchdown runs, and something crazy. I don't know. I had like one of those games like, okay, I can do this I'll just do this till basketball comes around, and it ended up sticking.
So what's the process of making that decision? Okay, it has to be football moving forward, because that had to be tough to make that elimination process.
Well, yes and no. I mean, we didn't have a whole lot growing up, so I had to get the money. The money right there was in front of me. Football, I was having success. We just won state. I was All-State. I was honorable mention USA Today. I mean, I was having some success football-wise, even though basketball was my favorite sport, was my love. And people started noticing. I started getting more recruited. Back then, Utah wasn't a highly recruited place. It's more now. And people started noticing me. And so I was getting letters and invites and taking trips. And, and I would ask every coach or every school, can I do both? I met with Bill Frieder, Arizona State. I met with Rick Majerus at Utah. I was meeting with all these different coaches just in case. And, of course, they all tell you that. They're going to recruit you. Oh, yeah, you can do both. You can do both. And I did at Utah for a year. I did both for a year. It was just one of those things, man. I had to get the money while the money was there, make sure I had my scholarship because I had nothing guaranteed on the basketball side of things. And so I took the money that was in hand, and it ended up being the best decision for me.
Certainly, Utah's conference, and they weren't in the Pac-12 when you were there, but they are now, and I don't know what the future of that looks like. We're recording this here on June 30th, so I don't know what the latest developments will be in this college football blow-up story that we're seeing by the time this podcast comes out. But
Right.
I noticed Kyle Whittingham, the defensive coordinator, replaced his dad, Fred. I know you're not on the defensive side of the ball, but was one of the coaches there when you were playing. What do you remember about a young Kyle Whittingham?
Actually, it's funny. I did both my freshman year. I was recruited as a DB. I wasn't even a receiver in high school. I played tight end in a double wing offense.
So you briefly played for his dad.
Yeah, well, right? His dad, it was one of the people recruiting me. He actually pulled me into his office. He's got a real raspy voice, and Dyson, what are you going to do? You want to play offense? You want to play defense? I said, Coach, I just want to play. And, and he wanted me to make a decision. And so we had some injuries. I started off with playing receiver because the one who actually recruited me was Fred Graves, who used to be a receiver coach here at Tennesse. He recruited me. He thought I'd be a college receiver. Everybody else recruited me as a DB, corner, free safety. As a matter of fact, I was USA Today, honorable mention, free safety. So he asked me that, and I said, man, Graves recruited me. He's the one I had a relationship with. He started off playing receiver. We had a lot of injuries. Well, we were in the WAC back then. Everybody threw the ball in the air, so I thought I was going to play. But the week they brought me up, I didn't play, thank goodness, because I messed up my red shirt, but it was Hawaii. And Hawaii ran a single wing. I was about to be hitting quarterbacks, and I was a scrawny kid. I went to college 153 pounds, Division I football player. And it was just, he was special as a guy who can see talent. I'm talking about Fred Graves. Now, Kyle, on the other hand, which is an interesting fact people don't even know, Kyle was the defensive coordinator at Idaho State. And him and Gary Anderson, who both ended up coming over to Utah my freshman year, were recruiting me at Idaho State, told me I'd be a starter as soon as I walk on campus and the whole nine. Lo and behold, not that I was going to Idaho State, I didn't even take a trip, but if I would have, he ended up being at Utah anyway. So it's just my relationship with the Whittinghams, and me and Kyle have joked about it since because he wanted me to come play defense for him. He was defense coordinator at Idaho State at the time, and then he ended up making his way as a linebacker coach for the Utes under his dad, and then eventually taking over for his dad. His dad passed away several years ago, and then when Kyle got his chance to take over for Urban Meyer, he hasn't looked back.
Defending Pac-12 champs.
Yeah.
Going to be interesting to see what the future of Utah football looks like with the landscape of college football. Now.
Yeah, they got a lot of people returning. That's how that is. The rankings are based off of returning players, and, we lose Lloyd and a couple other guys, Brent Covey, and a couple very productive players. But, one thing I can say about Utah since they moved to the Pac-12, they've done a good job recruiting. They've done a good job of adding depth. I think we've always had some talent, but the depth wasn't always there. Now we go 2-3 deep for the most part in most positions, particularly up front, and that's the big difference in college football. You got to be able to be deep up front. They got the same kind of depth as Alabama or whoever, Georgia, maybe not, but that's the difference. That's why they've had so much success in the Pac-12 in the last several years is they've added that depth, and they've been able to, recruit well and be in the conversations of one of the best schools in the Pac-12.
So 4 years at Utah, 192 catches, 2,726 yards, 18 touchdowns. And in 1998, you're a first-round draft pick to the Tennessee Oilers. What do you remember about draft day and ending up with this team that's in this transition from Houston to Nashville and playing in Vanderbilt Stadium?
I go back. My agent, they had called and they asked us if I wanted to go to New York. And I was a humble kid from Utah, man. I didn't think everybody was telling me 8 to 16, but to me, that means 8 to 228. I didn't know. Until my name was called, I didn't know. But, I felt like I did enough in the pre-draft stuff. I felt like I did enough productive-wise in college to be in the conversation. Of course, in my draft, we had some very good receivers and, Randy Moss, Hines Ward, Jerome Payton, Jaquez Green, Larry Shannon, Mike Ricks, Tim Dwight. Man, we had a pretty deep receiver class. Marcus Nash was another first-round draft pick that year from Tennessee. So we had a pretty deep draft. And looking at the draft class, I was like, man, I just need to get in. That was my mentality. Just get me in. And I pre-workout with the Oilers. Fred Reeves, Coach GM Reeves. I'm drawing a blank on my mind.
Yeah.
Floyd, thank you. Golly, I'm drawing a blank on the man who drafted me. Floyd spoke to me and my agent, and he said, my agent said, where do you think he's going to go in the draft? And he said 8 to 16. And I was like, wait, they got the 16th pick. So the 16th pick comes up, and I didn't even go back. I didn't go to New York. The Cowboys contacted me. They gave me a phone. So I had 2 phones, my phone and the Cowboys phone. And the dude sat out front of my mom's house waiting till the Cowboys picked. And then he knocked on the door, and I gave him the phone back. And I think they were 8. So then they left. And then the Giants were trying to trade up to 10 with Baltimore to get me. But I think Baltimore wanted too much. So they ended up drafting Dwayne Starks. 11 was Trey Thomas, which is Philly was another one my agent was talking to. 12 was Atlanta. That was Keith Brooking. They ended up drafting Jamie German later, so they ended up getting Keith Brooking. And then Takeo Spikes and Simmons went 13-14, I think, or 13-15 to Cincinnati. And then 16 came up, and I was like, well, if he's no liar, I'm going to the Oilers. And sure enough, my phone rang. It was Jeff Fisher and Floyd Reese. And, man, you talking about relief. And back then, the first round was long. We're talking 16th pick, and that was like a whole half a day. It was like 3.5, 4 hours before I even got my name called. You talking about stress, man? I just wanted my name called so I could relax and go. I didn't know much about Nashville, Tennessee. All I cared was that I had opportunity. And my name got called, man, and here I am, and it worked out for me. But that process is probably the most stressed I've ever been as an athlete ever. But I've been pretty fortunate, and Nashville has embraced me for the most part, and and I've been here since '98, and my kids are here, and it's been a great place to me.
I don't know how much you knew about this young up-and-coming quarterback named Steve McNair on the day you got drafted, but
I knew a lot. I mean, I watched. You can't help but watch him when you're growing up, man.
Alcorn State.
Yeah.
What do you remember about the first time you met Steve?
Just how cool he was. We didn't have any Heisman hopefuls back then. We're in Mountain West. We didn't have a whole lot of fanfare as much. There was me, Luther Ellis, Chris Malfalla. There was some talent coming in and out, first-round talent. We had guys sporadically making their way. And now it's, we're sending 8, 9, 10 guys a year, it seems like now. But watching somebody like Mac, and again, I was the same draft class as Peyton Manning, and he had a different aura about him, right? You just walk around the building, everybody just like, oh, that's Peyton Manning, and you can't help but feel that way, like, dang, who is this guy? It's like Jesus in the flesh type thing,
Yeah.
And so when you meet somebody like Mac, who you've been watching on TV, and not only you watch him on TV, he's in a small school, small market, making national news, and I didn't know what to expect, but he was the most humble, most cool cat ever. Like he didn't get rattled. He didn't say a whole lot. He just played. Man, I just respected him so much because all he wanted to do was win. He didn't get down on me. He could have easily said, man, why we draft this cat? Give me another guy. But he always tried to make everybody around him better. And that's one thing I always appreciate about Mac.
So 8-8 that rookie season.
Yeah.
1999 comes along. You're finally in your new home in Adelphia Coliseum. Obviously, that's a 13-3 season. Was there a point before that season where you thought, okay, we've got something special here?
You know what? I'll tell you, that 8-8 year, we were very close. We lost a couple games late that we probably could have won. Easily could have put us in the playoffs even at 9-7. And I think Miami ended up going that year, finishing that last spot. I think maybe 8-8 or 9-7 themselves, and we just missed the playoffs that year. And we were very close. Everybody was coming back. then you added the freak, you added Javon Curse. And that was the component that was missing, just that dynamic guy off the edge. Kenny Holmes didn't do well. They were very productive across that defensive line, but you had that one to put fear in the defense was Javon, and that was the game changer. So I'm going to tell you, for me, when I saw it was like Blaine, Eddie, Frank, Wycheck, and Craig Hentrick, they put the uniforms on for the first time, and they were downtown, and they were doing a walkaway thing. That's when I was like, man, this is gonna be fun. This is gonna be special. New stadium. It was just like everything was fresh and new. And then we played the Bengals in that home opener. I mean, preseason was cool, but that home opener, it was hot. We were back and forth in that game. They make a big play. We'd go down methodically and score, and then, it was just this give and take. And then we found a way to win that game late. And that's when I felt like we were just like, man, we got something special. They had been on the cusp even before I got there. I think 2 years prior, they were 8-8 up until even my rookie year, 8-8. And then that next year, it was just progressively getting better. And then we won one close game. Then we went to Jacksonville, won that close game. It just, that confidence grew. It didn't matter what the situation was. We felt like we had a chance to win. And it just started snowballing from there. And that's how the season went up until that last play.
How often do you get asked about the miracle, about the Music City Miracle?
Oh, man. Depends on time of the year.
Mm-hmm, sure.
It really does. At times, interestingly enough, like a lot of the, you mentioned I'm a principal now. A lot of the kids' parents were kids when I was playing, or young men, young ladies.
About your age, right?
Right. And so they remember it. And so every now and then, because now they have more access to me, I guess, now they'll bring it up from time to time and ask me those questions. But it just really depends on the time of year. I think now I've been in this community for so long that you can see me, and so it's not as unique. You can reach me, and so not maybe so much anymore from a local standpoint, but nationally, radio stations, I still do stuff nationally, and it's cool. And I'll go somewhere. Just went to Oregon and met a guy, and he was like, "Your name sounds familiar." You know what I mean? And he wasn't part of the scramble stuff that we were doing, the foundation stuff we were doing. He just was a guy randomly, and he was like, "You sound familiar." So that's still cool, man. Just still have some people still remember, even 20-some odd years later. But more often than not, when you get around December, January, February, yeah, it picks up a lot.
Well, I'm not going to make you walk us through home run throwback and how often y'all would practice it and how you weren't supposed to be the one on the field. Right. And I think majority of Titans fans know that story. I won't make you reiterate that. But I am curious how well you remember that conversation when Jeff Fisher grabs you on the sideline and tells you that you're the third option, you're the one that's got to get in there. Like word for word, how well do you remember that conversation? That's
a great question. I don't know if anybody's asked me that before. I don't remember much. I've read some words of his, and he said he told me something, and I spouted back that I don't know what that is, Coach. I don't remember saying a word other than all right. Like I was just listening, I was just processing. Maybe I did say it, I don't know, but from my standpoint, I don't remember saying a word other than I knew the gist of the play. Yeah. I had watched it. Just a matter of what role I was in, and I was in the lateral role. I mean, in the secondary pitch role as Isaac Bird, who got moved over into the position unfamiliar to him, should have been the lateral guy. And I plan on talking to Ike about that soon. But of 20-some odd years later, I don't know if anybody's ever asked him that question. Mm-hmm. Like, why did he play the ball the way he did when it was a pooch kick? He looked like he came up to field it and maybe catch and get what he could, and then we run some offensive plays when technically he should have been the lateral guy. So at that point, I just, sometimes athletes got to be athletes, football players got to be football players. I'm sitting there, I see Frank's arm reeling back. Here it comes. And I just was a football player in a football moment, and it just worked out. It's just one of those things. It really was meant to be. It was a complete accident, a purposeful accident, but it was just meant to be, man. It was in the cards.
You think there's any edge you had at that moment for not having practiced that play? It might be a stupid question, but
that's a great question.
For not having had the routine or knowing exactly where you're supposed to be, you're supposed to go.
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know if I've ever been asked that either. No, I don't know. I think what it was, to be honest with you, it was Buffalo. I think they were overzealous. I think they were It was a nip-tuck type game, back and forth, which we had led pretty much the whole game, and they took the lead. And I think their kickoff team was who's going to make a play. And I'm going to be the guy to make the play. And I think they just got overzealous and were trying to make a play. And you can't necessarily fault them for that. You know what I mean? I think, in a situation like that, for the most part, most guys are going to try to get down there and make a play. I want to be the one to make this tackle, get this energy back up. We're about to go on to the divisional round. You know what I mean? And I think that's what it was. Now, I've heard like the conversation between Phillips and DeHay, who the special teams coach, who ended up losing his job, and Phillips lost his job because he wouldn't fire him because it wasn't his fault. And I stand firm that that's not necessarily the coach's fault. That's players, you run your lane and you collapse late. And who cares if we get the ball at the 35? There's still only so many seconds left, to get in field goal range, and you take your chances, play the odds. Well, football players, sometimes I said football players got to be football players. And I feel like that was them trying to make a play, and they created a running lane to the outside, which is by far the worst thing you can do, obviously. But, sometimes people try to make plays, and it's to your detriment when you do some things outside your assignment. As a coach, I tell my players, do your job first, then go make a play. And these guys went to go make the play first, and then they couldn't get back to their assignment. And to our benefit, because it helped us get to the next game.
Well, while they're under the hood reviewing that thing, do you have some doubt in that moment? Or like, how sure were you that was a lateral? Or are you thinking, that thing, that might come back?
I'll tell you what, at the moment, I had no doubt. Like, okay. For real, like people were asking me, was you behind him? I'm like, man, oh yeah. Like, That's not even a question. It really was not until I got home and saw the highlights that I was like, oh.
It was close.
It was close. I seriously, man. I had no doubt, because in the heat of the moment, it really is a snap thing. It's really like super. It's like less than 1 second when this thing's happening, right? Mm-hmm. And I step back. In my eyes, I step back. And if you see me lunge and reach back. I think more often than not, people look at the position of me and Frank and not the flight of the football. You look at the flight of the football, it is by definition a lateral. It's literally right down the line. That's what the definition of lateral is. Don't look at the bodies, and our technology needs to go ahead and take the bodies out of it. Now we can do that. Just take the bodies out of it and watch the flight of the football. Everybody, even Buffalo Bill fans, would say, oh, that was a lateral. I just truly believe that. Maybe I'm biased, but maybe I'm not. But that's why I'm waiting on technology to go ahead and prove that for me.
Well, I think it has. I think you're in the clear on that.
See, there we go. See?
But 3 weeks later, Titans fall to the St. Louis Rams in Super Bowl 34.
Yeah.
Which play do you think you've relived in your head more often, the miracle or the tackle short of the end zone?
From a personal standpoint, the tackle. Mm-hmm. I think I see the miracle more outwardly, people posting it, talking about it, asked about it, reminded me of where they were about it, things of that nature. And every now and then people would do the same thing with Super Bowl. But from a personal standpoint, that was the first time in my athletic life ever that I wasn't successful when I had the ball in the end. I'm talking 3 seconds left with the ball in your hand to shoot a three, and you had to make it, made it. Free throw at the end of the line, no time on the clock, got to make both, hit them. Extra kicks, penalty kicks in soccer game. I'm the last one. It's tied 4-4. Like I hit the fifth one. Yeah. I hit it. Like that was the first time ever I can remember that I was not successful when I had the opportunity with the ball in the hand to win a game or tie it or whatever. And so it was a hard pill to swallow, man. I was stressed. I mean, I've told this story over time too. I went to my dentist because I get stress blisters or canker sores in my mouth, and I had literally like 20 something. And he would take this acidic serum and put them on there to help close them up. And whatever it does, and I literally had tears come in my eyes. It was that painful. It was like, and the nurse who was doing it, she was like, I'm so sorry. It's not you. It's just, this hurts. Yeah. And my mouth was just covered with them, man. People don't know how bad I really took that. But at the same time, it motivated me too, because that offseason was one of my best ever. I wanted to get back to that moment. I wanted to complete the deal. I wanted to win a trophy. We had a good team coming back. Pretty much everybody was coming back. We just needed to add depth to a couple things, and we did that, and we went 13-3. And so it was another great team, and unfortunately I got injured that year. But all that to say, that play alone, I think I internalized that one a lot more than you said miracle. And again, I tell people a lot of times I learned a lot more from that play than I even the miracle. Not that I don't learn anything for the miracle, but I think you learn more from your failures than your successes a lot of times.
Kind of what I was going to ask you about next. It's such of all the plays that have been, snapped in NFL history, very tiny little percentage that have nicknames, right? And you're a part of 2 within a span of 3 weeks.
Oh, yeah, I never thought of it like that. That's true.
mean, when you think about dealing with the high of the miracle and the low of the tackle, I was going to ask you, how did 24-year-old Kevin Dyson handle all of that? But it sounds like there were some positives and negatives.
There was some positive and negatives. The negatives was a short stint. It was, immediately after for a month or so. And then I was right back in the gym. I was right back running. I went out to L.A. I trained with Jerry Rice. I was doing a whole lot of different things. Like I was just, it motivated me, right? But there was that moments there where it's just like, man, you let everybody down, you let the city down, you let your teammates down. And I looked at it. I don't know much more I could have done differently. Maybe I could have pushed a little higher. But I watched how Mike and Mike have diagrammed the play and talked about it. If I push up even more, I'm colliding with him at the 5 instead of him having to reach and extend to try to make the play. It's a bang bang play. He might even knock the ball out. I might not even have a catch. So it's just one of those things. The woulda, couldas, shoulda. I've thought about for 20 some odd years now. Looking at it, I've talked about it, and even like you mentioned, my podcast, Mike was on there. We briefly talked about it, and again, he even said, man, it was just one of those things. It was meant to be for him, right? We talked about the miracle on my end. That was a moment meant for him. That was his moment that he needed, and for his career, the validation. And y'all have heard me say this before. The NFL is not made up of Hall of Famers. I mean, we talk about the Hall of Famers. We talk about the Tom Brady's, the Peyton Mannings, the Randy Mosses. We talk about those guys for a very, very, very special reason, and we should. But the NFL is made up of role players. And me and Mike Jones were role players, and we were in a moment where our roles were extended and extenuated, and everybody's eyes are on us. And at that time, that was his role to be the guy on the top of the heap and not me, and vice versa. 3 weeks prior, that was my moment, and as part of a group of kick returners and the kick return team. But and to still be having these conversations, was it 22 and a half years later?
Yeah.
It's special because there's a lot of people. I mean, how many is it? There's like 1,500 members in the NFL Hall of Fame. There's 1,500 members every year on rosters. So that tells you that's 103 years of football, that how many guys have played, come and gone that nobody even talks about, that helped their team win Super Bowls, helped Hall of Famers become Hall of Famers. And yet I was a role player, and people still ask for me to come speak, still talk about, like you mentioned, 2 plays that I was a part of. Man, that's unique and special just because the way my career ended.
By the way, that podcast you referred to with Mike Jones, 3 the Pro Way on the Zone Podcast Network. We'll talk about that in a few moments. But I love that you kept a relationship with Mike, and you guys grew close over the years. I looked it up. I didn't realize I grew up in Birmingham. I went to that inaugural USFL game for the Stallions. He's the wide receivers coach of the Birmingham Stallions.
Yeah.
I thought that was cool. But when did that relationship, had that started prior to the Super Bowl?
No.
You guys connected after? When did that relationship kind of start up?
After, interestingly enough, we scrimmaged them in Missouri, them being the Rams when they were St. Louis. We scrimmaged them that very next year. We went down, that was the inter-squad scrimmage, played them in the preseason, and I had a great camp. I mean, I tell you, I was on my way. Like, there was going to be no doubt I was about to be that guy. That was a conversation. Heimerdinger just became the office coordinator. We was having this conversation. I was about to become that dude, and that's how I felt. I just felt I was on that trajectory. That's kind of where my mindset was, and that's where I was. And I was having a really good camp. Well, I think day 2 of that camp, maybe in the first day, we sat down with Stuart Scott, and I think that was the first time either of us had watched the play since it happened. And I mean, literally, I didn't watch highlights. I didn't watch it. And I think that was the first time either of us had watched the play. And that was healing for me, and just being real. And that's when we became cool, because he was humble about it. He recognized that play could have easily gone one way or the other. He said it, man, if I don't get my left arm up over your knee to stop you from extending, man, we're going to overtime. Who knows? Y'all, we were dog tired. Like, y'all had our number at that point. Y'all had the momentum. And I think that was healing for me. That was what I think I needed at that moment. And then, shoot, like I told y'all, man, I went and did the rest of my camp. I felt good, and I just let it go. I let it go. Then I let all that stress, all that anxiety, all that depression, all that stuff I had up until that camp go. I just like, okay, this is over now. And so from that moment on, we just been cool. We've done things from time to time over the years together, obviously, because we're kind of synonymous with one another. We did another one when I was assistant principal at Stewart's Creek. He actually was in town recruiting, so they worked it out where we can actually watch the last drive together. Again, that was a first. I still haven't watched the game. Yeah. That was the only time I've ever watched that last drive, and we were going, and people said it like, how do y'all know play-by-play? We were going play-by-play. Oh, yeah, this is when so-and-so, and it was interesting to do that with him from his perspective, and I was giving mine and what we were thinking. He was giving theirs and what they were thinking, and we haven't done that since, and that was probably 2013, 2014, and when we did that. And again, you talk about unique circumstances, and we were cool from that. And so over the years, we just maintained. We talk every now and then. And it's funny because I'll meet somebody, oh, Mike Jones, he said blah, blah, blah. And so our paths seem to cross even if we didn't talk. And so, again, you talk about stuff that's meant to be. Like I said, I think that was a moment for him that was meant to be. That validated, because he worked his tail off. People don't realize he came in the league, started off as a running back, got switched to linebacker, and had no idea how to play linebacker. And eventually became a long-time veteran in this league and a Super Bowl champion. So that was one of those things, man. I feel like that was a validation for a long career for him.
Talk about things that are meant to be. Your brother Andre, drafted by the Titans in 2001. I feel like there's one of two reactions you can have to that, either thrilled or furious, right?
Yeah.
What was your reaction when Andre gets drafted?
I was happy, man. I'm the oldest of single mom, and he's the baby brother, man. And, you know, you always want to look out for him. I always have. I feel like I always have with him because before you, even though we're only 4 years difference, but he's always looked out for him. And so for me, that was kind of how I can keep my eyes on him. You know, he had a place to stay, had a place to eat. He didn't have to spend any of his money, even though he was like, big bro, I got money now, I'm good. And I was like, no, I got you, you know. And he literally said that. He was like, big bro, I'm good, man. I got my own money now. But it was good, man. And I knew too, because it'd be hard. I mean, my mom, if he would have went to New York or somewhere else, now my mom's got to decide which game I'm going to this week, and I'm gonna stay there in New York for 1 week, then come to Tennessee for a week and catch. So it just worked itself out for a few years where we can play together and everybody can still root for the Titans. I mean, I had built a fan base in my hometown in Vegas and in Clearfield and in Salt Lake City, of course. Because of my success I had up until that moment, and so it was nobody had to switch teams until I became a free agent, and it worked itself out, man. It was a fun experience that I didn't take for granted, but I didn't take advantage like I should have. And knowing how the world is now of business and networking, and taking opportunity, making the most of opportunities, I didn't. With my brother, I mean, how unique is that? You know, we're both the first picks of the franchise. We played opposite positions. We have NFL records that have stood for 20 years now, and that I don't know if it'll ever be broken. I don't know how many other receiver-corner duos are on the same team where you're going to have a reception for a touchdown in the same game as your brother has an interception for a touchdown in the same game.
It's never happened.
Exactly.
You're the only duo of brothers to have a touchdown in the same
game, right? Mm-hmm. So and again, we did not talk about that. We never emphasized it. We both got this humbleness to us where we just kind of want to do our jobs and leave the fanfare alone, but we should have taken advantage of those sort of things. And but lesson learned, life learned, man. I was a young kid who just wanted to play ball and didn't want all the attention, because I felt like if I got more attention, more expectation came with attention, and I didn't want that. I just wanted to play ball, but I should have known that you're going to have attention, you're going to have pressure regardless. And, again, I'm 40-something years old now. I can say that now to my 20-something-year-old self, but that's the only regret. That's the only thing I have about my time with my brothers, that we didn't take advantage of our opportunities that probably went in front of us, like the Barber brothers, or even the McCourty brothers. You've seen them do commercials and different things together, and me and my brother didn't. And why not? Again, like you said, we have a record that has, in 102 years in the NFL, has never happened. It's only happened once. So, Was
your mom at that game?
No, I don't think so. I don't know. I need to ask her. That's a good question. I'm trying to think, because she came to quite a few. I don't think so. It was a hot summer day. I remember a September day. But it's a good question. I could ask her.
So, obviously, you spend the 2003 season with Carolina. The last game of your NFL career happens to be a Super Bowl. But when you take 1,000-foot view and you look at your NFL career as a whole, how do you look back at it now compared to maybe how you did in 2006 when you're moving on?
Man, it's hard. It's hard, man. It's been a hard pill to swallow for me because I feel like I left a lot on the table. I felt like I left a lot of meat on the bones, man. It's just, I didn't get the opportunities that I wanted because of injuries. It wasn't my talent. I mean, literally, I sat in the room with Mark Schottenheimer. He's like, man, you one of our best receivers. I just, we got these guys and we got to see it through. I get in there with Coach Gibbs, same thing, man. You had one of our best camps. But I just drafted Taylor Jacobs and we just signed Patton and Santana Moss. I like a lot of tight ends, man. I just don't know what to do. So it wasn't my skill. It was, can he still hold up for a long season because of the unfortunate events of all my injuries? I wasn't an injury-prone dude. I was injury-plagued. And I've said that over the years. Like, injury-prone means I get hurt on week 4, then I'm hurt again week 6, and then I'm out. I tore my Achilles, I tore my ACL, I tore my hamstring off the bone, like injury-plagued. It wasn't one of those things where when I played, I didn't miss games. I didn't miss snaps. It's just I had a major injury for like 2 of my last 3 years, I should say, because I had 2 of them within a 6-month span in free agent market. And so, yeah, man, I feel like I left a lot out there from a talents perspective. And I could have kept grinding. I had some other opportunities come up. I could have went to Canada. I had some people reach out to me, but the pride in me wouldn't let me do it. I knew I was still talented enough to still play in the NFL. I was watching my backups be starters in the league. Justin McCarron's and Drew Bennett, they were making buku money, and I'm like, they were my backups. Like, how are they? You know what I mean? No offense to them, but that's just how my mindset was. Like, I know I'm as talented, if not more talented, as some of these guys out here. And I'm not even talking about Justin and Drew alone. I'm talking about other guys too. And so it was hard for me to watch football for a little while. But then I jumped right into radio, and I'm trying to pretend like it's not affecting me. But there was a lot to deal with, man. We've talked about over years, man. There's a lot of depression that comes with former athletes, man. People don't even realize that's real. You see them tears about letting go. That's the longest relationship any athlete has, especially when you get to that level. I can't imagine like Brett Favre or Jerry Rice and some of these guys who did it for 20 years plus or whatnot, man. That's hard, man. When you invested that much time, that much energy, that much emotion and things into one thing. Like, you literally pour 9-10 months of your life, if not 11 months of your life, because you do have some downtime, but into this one thing, and you invested, and then it's not necessarily because you don't feel like you can do it. Because mentally, I still feel like I can go play right now, and I know I can't, but mentally, I feel like I can. But and then you get to that point, and you say, "Man, you can't do this no more." That's a hard pill to swallow, man, and it was hard. It's like breaking up, like getting a divorce with the longest relationship in your life, and then people telling you, and it's not even your choice in a lot of respects. It's just the circumstances that come with it, and that was hard, man. That was hard. It took me a while. And I had to find a new identity in a lot of respects, and that's what has driven me in the direction I am now. I feel like I had to find a different identity. I had to find something that was mine, and challenge myself in a different way, and grow as an individual, and have different goals and aspirations and things of that nature. It took me some years to get to that. I was retired, like you said. I retired 2005, 2006. Really, I moved in administration in 2013. So that's a pretty big gap before you start figuring out what your passion is or what your calling is outside of playing sport. So man, that's kind of how it all kind of transpired for me.
So you've entered a few phases, obviously, in your post-football life, whether it be coaching, broadcasting, education. Broadcasting came first, right?
It did.
Titans radio, right out. Who approaches you to join the Titans radio team?
Well, I was doing coaching, too. I was at a small private school in Nashville at the time. And then I think Brad Willis contacted me first, I think, just out of interest of doing something. And then I did some stuff with TSAA. I did some color commentary with them. And truth be told, I was terrible at the beginning. But again, it's one of those things you got to do it. Y'all both, y'all been doing this for years, and you got to start somewhere. And high school sports is one of the best place to start because there's not a whole lot of information, especially we're talking about 2006, 2007. It wasn't like you can Google everything about everybody now, but back then you had to really interview kids and get to know them and try to remember names and this kid from this school. I can't even pronounce half the daggone schools I was commentating on. And I needed to get better at it. And I talked to a few people because I thought I was going to work for Westwood One and do some stuff. And I was like, is that really my passion? But I enjoyed it. I really do. I still do. And then I started working with the pre and post show. It was me and Mark and Peter Sermon. I think it was just me and Mark for a little while. Then Blaine Bishop came in, me and Mark, and Mickey was at it. And, I can see myself starting to grow in it. And it just became, because it's just like anything else, the more you do it, the better you get. It's just, you just got to keep practicing on it and be deliberate with that practice. And that's when I really starting to grow in that. And so I was thinking, oh, maybe I'll go start doing that aspect of it. But then the education thing kind of started taking off, and then I kind of have settled in on that as well. So it's just, man, transition is hard. If it was easy, man, you wouldn't hear the horror stories you hear about former athletes specifically having a hard time transitioning from pro life to regular life. And I don't know how else to say that because I ain't no life regular, but regular life considered coming from a professional athlete's perspective, it can be hard, man. It can be difficult. And if you don't have anything to kind of hold you there, to motivate you, man, that's where you see guys falter and struggle.
So does coaching or teaching come first for you?
Both. I was a part-time, I was like half-day middle school PE teacher. I saw some different opportunities. I saw out coaching, and I found how political that was. I thought I had a job at UT Martin, and I went up there. I was working spring ball. I thought I had a deal worked out. I go to Utah, and I also thought I was going to interview at MTSU when I got back. And I get on the website. Both of them had hired somebody. No communication from either one of the coaches. And they had hired the one at MTSU. I understood that Watson for Stockstill, he had played for him at Clemson. I understood that. The one at UT Martin, I didn't necessarily understand. I thought I was under the impression that I was going to be their receivers coach, and we were going to make it work. I was doing radio. I was going to use that time to come do Titans radio. Use that time to recruit, spend time with the family, and then go back up, coach, travel, games, etc. Keep that kind of momentum going. I had it kind of worked out. And I don't know if that's what scared him off or whatever, but then lo and behold, he went a different direction. So I kind of got a bad taste in my mouth. And then at Utah, I thought I had a deal worked out, and he wanted me to be a graduate assistant. But
was it Kyle?
Yeah, okay. But be the receivers coach, undergraduate assistant pay. I was like, man, I got mouths to feed. I got, my insurance, carried on, so. I mean, and part of me wish that I would have tried it just to see. You just never know. But again, everything has for a reason because I'm here now, and I would have never pursued my doctorate had I probably went that route. And that's one of my greatest accomplishments. I'm very proud of that. So, but that's kind of why I didn't end up at Utah. And then, so I started off at a small private school here, and I loved coaching. And I found I had a patience to coach that I didn't know I had. Like, I didn't have this expectation that everybody was going to be me. I didn't have expectation that everybody was going to be the next great wide receiver or great quarterback or DB or whatever. It was just, I got to share what I learned, and that was fun. And then I was like, I'll settle in here, secondary school. I said, well, I just don't want to be just a PE teacher and a coach. So I presented an opportunity to that school about maybe working in their in diversity inclusion. This is 2005, 2006. And I had that vision, like how we can enhance and grow your diversity inclusion piece for your school. I tell people it's funny. I drew up this whole job description. I Googled some stuff, drew it out. I had WordPad. I didn't have Word Perfect. I had WordPad. I didn't even know how to draw business plans or job description. I just made this thing up. It looked decent for me. She probably looked at it 60 ways, probably like, what is this crap? And so I went ahead and I did it, and I drew this whole thing to help diversity inclusion at the school. And they were like, oh, that's nice. And they just kind of was like, well, I'll put it to the side. They offered me some other different things, but A buddy of mine who I was playing softball at the time, I was trying to stay somewhat active. He had an opportunity for a position at a Metro National School, a public school, and I was like, man, let me try it, see if I can grow. And truth be told, I don't know if I did that position justice, considering what my expectations are for people that work for me, but it was much needed. I learned a lot about education. I needed to grow. I needed that opportunity to see what I needed to do. And then I went back, got my second master's and from public school teaching, and ended up at Independence. And then some years later, after I was done coaching, I got my doctorate.
So coaching kind of leads to teaching, right?
Yeah.
Like you discover that passion through coaching.
Yeah.
I imagine there was a comfort level in coaching, just being around the game and broadcasting too. So there had to be some sort of discomfort in teaching, especially at first, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I'll say this. My first year at the small private school, playing with middle school kids, man, I didn't have to do any lesson plans. They were always set out for me because I was coming in like at around lunchtime, right before lunch, like 10:40, 11 o'clock, and be there for the rest of the day. And lesson plans already mapped out. I was playing kickball, soccer, everything with kids all day long. That was the funnest job ever, man. I was just playing sports all day with middle school kids. I still talk to a lot of those kids to this day. Interestingly enough, man, like I ran a mile. Now, I'm a sprinter. Now, if we had a sprint, I was still in shape back then, so we did a mile run. And they was like, run the mile. This is sixth grade class, one of the sixth grade classes. And 3 of them jokers beat me, man. I shouldn't even admit that. I shouldn't even admit that. One of them was a girl.
And you're what, 2 years removed?
2 years removed. No, 1 year. 1 year removed in the mile run. And I ran, for me, which was a pretty good mile. It was a sub-7. It was like 7-minute mile. Yeah. And these little kids running 6-something miles, man, in 6th grade.
Not a lot of weight.
Man, no. And I've struggled.
Will Bowling's next to us in the studio pumping his fists. He was that kid. I think that was Will Bowling.
Yeah,
actually.
Yeah. Man, I was proud of my little 7-minute mile, let alone these little jokers. And if they ever listen to this podcast, you know who you are. I'm still looking for you.
So when you end up as the head coach at Independence and you are off and running in your educational career, is a doctorate floating around in your mind? At what point did that start to creep in as a goal?
I'll say this. So when I went to Metro Nashville in public school, I was working in a Title I position, so I didn't need a teacher position. I didn't need a teacher certificate because I was working in Title I positions. But I did that for a couple of years, and when I went to Independence, I was teaching and an athletic director, so I had to go back and get another master's degree in teaching. So that's when I went back and got the teaching certification. I had my master's in administration and leadership because I thought I was going to be an athletic director and a coach. That was kind of what I felt was my trajectory. I knew I'd be in a position of leadership, and I kind of have known that was my passion to be. I love leadership. I love guiding people, leading people, coaching people. And so I did the leadership route first. Well, when I went to Williamson County, I had to get a teaching certification, so I went back and got another master's. Well, my plan at first, because it was always kind of a bucket list item, can I do it? When I got my first master's, I was like, I'll just go ahead and continue and go on. Well, that was a lot of school. I had been out of school 10, 11 years at that time and then go right back. I tell people all the time, when I did my GRE, man, I hadn't been to school since 1997. I got drafted in 98, and we're talking 2007-ish, 2007. Lots changed. And so, I had no idea. They were talking about PowerPoint, Excel, Word. I didn't know what none of that stuff was, right? It's crazy, right? You play ball, you think, I didn't have to do none of that crap. And so I go back, I get into my second master's.
At Trevecca.
Right. And I'm like, I'm not going back to nobody's school. I'm good. I'm done. And I just started coaching. Well, I got into administration in 2013, and I moved back to Independence in 2016. And in between that, I was still at Stewart's Creek High School, and I went to this thing in Orlando. It was for coaches. There was a coach and administrator from each state. And we were talking about misogyny in sports and how to overcome that, how to better coach young men, away from statements like you hit like a girl or things like that. That was the overarching conversation. And it was Joe Ehrman's book, Inside Out Coaching. And it was a fabulous event, man. It was some great speakers. And anyway, so I'm checking in, and the lady recognizes my name, and she started talking. She works with the NFL. She was like, "So you have 2 master's degrees? I said, yes, ma'am. She's like, did we pay for those? I was like, who paid for those? She said, the NFL. I said, no, I didn't know they would. She's like, oh, you need to call the NFLPA. Well, by that time, I'd already they're done. I got both master's degrees. I didn't, whatever. But then one day it hit me. I was like, you know what? I was I'm now this time I'm back at Independence. And I was like, let me call the NFL.
And you're no longer coaching at this point,
I'm not
right?
coaching
You're
anymore.
all the way administration, education.
And I said, hey, somebody told me that the NFL would pay for advanced degrees for former players. Oh, yeah. So, blah, blah, blah. When was your last credited season? I told him, I said, well, you're outside the statute of limitation of when we would do that. It said, but you can call the NFL Trust. I had no idea what the NFL Trust is at that time. Now I do, but they've done a better job of establishing themselves. I think when this happened, they had been around for like 2-3 years. And it said, well, call the NFL Trust. They may do it. Well, of course, I get on the phone with them. They say the exact same thing. You're outside of statute of limitation. Sorry, we can't reimburse you for something you did at that point, like 7 years ago or 6 years ago, whatever it was. And but if you want to ever extend your education, we can apply for a grant and we can probably pay for that. I was like, okay. So I applied. I looked up the information for what a doctorate was, and they pretty much gave me every penny. So at that point, I'm like, well, I don't have no excuse. I got into it. And
At Trevecca.
And they pretty much, the NFL paid for it, and all I had to do was do the work. And so that's how it happened. And it was meant to be in a lot of respects, because if I had to pay for it, I wasn't going. So it was like I was on scholarship again in a lot of respects. So they pretty much paid for it. Pretty much almost like 98% of it they paid for. So it's a $40,000 education that I pretty much only paid a few $100s out of, and I had no excuse.
How difficult was that process compared to everything else that you've done in your football, education, coaching, broadcasting, everything, your entire career?
Yeah.
How does that stack up?
It's one of the hardest things I've ever done, but it's one of the most rewarding, if not the most rewarding thing. But I'll say this. I've said this to people before. It's my greatest accomplishment, and I not to belittle being a first-round draft pick at all, and I'll never take that away, and I would never take that experience away. But I knew that world. I knew train. I knew lift weights. I knew go work. I knew study film. I knew that world. That was easier to me. But I didn't know if I had the capacity to be good academically. What I learned about myself was I had all the same ability in me to be successful academically. The perseverance, hard work, dedication, organized, motivation, all those things that I used as an athlete, I just put into my academics. And then I was like, oh, if I'd have done this, and I was a decent student. I mean, I wasn't a bad student. I was a 3.3, 3.4 kid in high school. Of course, I didn't extend myself. I just did what I needed to do. And then you get into college, I was a 2.4, 2.5, wasn't ugly. And I had one bad semester, it almost cost me a year of eligibility. I had to buckle down and end up making the dean's list, but that's neither here nor there. But that, when I talk about that doctorate, one of the hardest things I've ever done from an academic standpoint, from a learning standpoint, from a personal standpoint, all I did was apply all the same skills that I had into that, and it just worked itself out.
And now you're the principal at Centennial High School.
Yeah,
with
man.
a doctorate in education. I mean, it really is a remarkable journey. And then you throw in the podcast, 3 the Pro Way, on the 104.5 The Zone Podcast Network. You co-host it with former Western Kentucky student-athlete Todd Campbell, former Tennessee star receiver Joey Kent, who people hear on our airwaves a lot as well. How did that process start? How long have you known Joey and Todd?
Well, I'm 20-something years now. Joey was a 97 draft pick of the Oilers, and I met Todd through Joey 98, 99, so 20-some-odd years. I've known them both. We've become very good friends. That podcast started conversation with Blaine Bishop and Chris Sanders. We were just talking about, man, people always asking us questions about that transition in life, and we've all had some kind of successes. And then I started talking to Joey about it, and it just kind of materialized from there. So it was about 3-4 years ago. I did a couple interviews. One with Sports Illustrated, and then one with ESPN, I think it was. And I just got my doctorate, so it was like 2018, 2019. And that story had started getting some legs, and me becoming a principal, and people started doing stories about me transitioning. And I was like, man, I'm not the only one that has had success transitioning. And I say success, I'm still trying to get better. But And so I was like, man, there's so many stories out there people want to hear, and I want to be part of that. I want to tell the people stories and get to know people. So that's kind of how it started. So me and Joey started brainstorming some ideas and how can we make this work, and schedules and things. And so Todd kind of got brought into it. It just kind of naturally fit with Todd because how this all kind of fold. We're all been friends 20 years, families of friends and all that kind of stuff. And so it just grew from there. And we just kind of started playing around with it and trying to get better at it. And it's been fun. I think the funnest thing is similar to what we're doing here is getting to know some people. Yeah. Like I thought I knew Eddie George,
right?
And then I found out little bits and tidbits about him. I thought I knew Andre Miller, found out little stuff about him. You know what I'm saying? I thought I knew Brad Hopkins. I found out little tidbits about him. It's been fun getting to know guys who I even thought like friends. Getting to know them a lot and hearing their story, because when you play ball, you know their college life, you may know their married life, you know their professional life, but you don't know what it was like for them as a kid. You don't know that struggle they had as a kid. I didn't realize Eddie was a bad kid, so to speak, you know what I mean, and had to go to military school. I didn't know some of these different things. I didn't know Mike Keith was the cord guy at the side at Bowling Arena carrying the cord for basketball games. I know he was a movie phone guy. I didn't know these things about people who had been around my life for 20 plus years. And so it's been fun, man. And I'm just naming the athletes. I'm not even naming some of the other guests that we've had to get to know their stories. And a figure skater who parents got divorced because of mom really wanted her to pursue that dream of the Olympic dream, and dad was like, why are we investing all this money? And they put a lot of strain on their family. They ended up divorcing, that sort of thing. Like, there's some real life stories people are dealing with. And so it's been fun to tell them, man. And we hope to continue to grow at it and expand our profile and get more guests and see where it goes.
Yeah, I enjoyed the most recent one with Don Davenport, too. Yeah. Former volleyball player at Auburn.
Again, another one, I didn't know her story. Mm-hmm. I mean, I knew she was an athlete, and I knew some of the stuff she had done regionally, especially here in Tennessee, but I didn't know how deep it went. I didn't know she was an 8th grader in Peachtree City, Georgia, being bused to play high school ball. Like, I mean, that's phenomenal, you know, and I would have never known that, and it's been fun to get to know folks, man.
Again, 3 The Pro Way, wherever you find your podcasts on the 104.5 The Zone Podcast Network. Really encourage you to go check that out. As we near the end here, Kevin, you're so deeply rooted in the Nashville community at this point, as a broadcaster, as a Titans legend, as a principal, just you name it. There's a list of former Titans players that finished their career elsewhere that live here. Keith Bullock, business owner in Middle Tennessee. Blaine Bishop on Blaine and Mickey every day on The Zone. Yourself. Why is that? Why is that for you? I know you won't speak for those other guys, but why do you think that is?
I mean, the list goes on. There's players. I was just playing golf in Abandon, Oregon, and talking to like Ryan Leaf and Kyle Bowler. Kyle Bowler's coming out here thinking about moving here. Danny Farmer, another former athlete, played for the Bengals, UCLA cat. He's thinking about making a move. I mean, there's a lot of people that have made this Middle Tennessee at home. I can only, like you said, I can speak for me, and I can speak from why I ended up staying. I think for me, it was one, I was being embraced by a community, and UC Miracle side, all that stuff. I was, it felt like home. It was very family driven. You still had a sense of a city. Now it feels like a city compared to when I was playing, but it has still had a little bit of city life, but it still had that down home, country, suburban feel to it as well, where you can get away from the city if you needed to, but you had enough of everything that you didn't feel like you were missing out so much, other than maybe the beach or the metropolis city like New York. But other than that, you really didn't feel like you were missing out on much because everything was growing. But now it's grown so much that it is a huge city now. It's one of the major cities in America right now where everybody's visiting in and out, things of that nature. So, and I think from everybody else's perspective, they're seeing that growth, and guys are coming here, and you'll be able to buy a home, you'll be able to raise families and things like that. While you're hearing Aaron Rodgers out here looking, you're hearing other people, other players, Kurt Herbstreit, who had no ties here. David Aker lives in my neighborhood, and he had no ties before he moved to the Nashville area, living in Franklin. They live in our neighborhood now. He had no ties to the area, and they moved here. And his son's a kicker for UCLA now.
Yeah,
so
former Ravenwood kicker.
Yeah. So so you got guys who have made this home and just felt comfortable, felt embraced, and you can be you and not feel overwhelmed and people messing with you. So it's just become home.
I want to close with this. What's the most rewarding part about your day-to-day at Centennial High School?
Wow. I guess it depends on the day. That's a great question. Man, I tell you what, the reason why I've done this for the long as I have is the impact I can have on a kid. There's so many times like a kid reminds me of me or somebody I know, like my brother or a friend or something, and I can relate to it. I can relate to the situation. And be able to speak life into that situation, girl or boy, white, black, other, it don't matter. Man, that's special. And I think that's a unique circumstance that the education provides, man. That you don't get that in too many other professions. Coaching, maybe, but education, when you're dealing with not with just sport, you're dealing with academics, you're dealing with social, you're dealing with social, emotional, you're dealing with so many different aspects, and you really have to be well-rounded person to lead a school. I truly believe that. Me becoming a principal has helped me grow as an individual in a lot more respects than probably anything else. That doesn't mean all those other things, even playing ball, radio, podcast, all that stuff has helped mold me. But I feel like education has helped me grow in each of those aspects. I think those things help me who I am as far as my leadership style. But that education has helped grow me as an individual, as a person. Leading a school when everything is on you, man, it changes your perspective on things because you're responsible for now almost 1,600 kids, 100 some odd staff and members and things of that nature. And then everywhere you go in the community, my kids sitting right over here, they'll tell you, they'll ask me, why are they saying to you? Do you know them? Like, no, I don't know them. When you're the face of a school, and of course my past, people come and talk to you. So you can't go anywhere now. And that's something that I don't take lightly either. And so, man, it's been a fun journey, and we'll see where it goes from here. But I'm gonna enjoy why I have it right now.
You guys ready for high school football season down there?
Yeah, I know y'all do radio and y'all do some of the.
We're having the meetings. We're planning it out.
That's it. Yeah,
Zone's high school football coverage. It's coming.
Yeah, and I see it, man. I'm optimistic with this year. I think Summit in our conference will have somewhat of a rebuild. I mean, they lost two of the best football players come through Middle Tennessee, and I know I coached their brother.
The Wade twins,
yeah, and I've known them since they were little. Aside from the kid,
you coached Jalen. That's right.
I did.
That's right.
Yeah, he was a 1,500-yard rusher
running back,
for me.
right?
Yeah.
Didn't he went to Navy, right?
Yeah, and aside from the kid from Ravenwood, I don't know anybody else in our division or conference, whatever you call it now, district. I don't know if anybody else scares me. Nobody at Franklin. Brentwood has a few ball players. They got a couple of ball players that could be pretty good. Summit, I'm not worried about it. Oh, Independence. Independence has the receiver. I can't think of the kid.
High Lockwood.
Yeah.
Tight end.
Yeah, on the tight end. Yeah. And so they got some people, and they have the upper hand as they're kind of the unknown commodity with a new head coach.
Yeah.
What system he's going to run? Is he running what he's been familiar with, or does he come in because the kids are different than what he had? So what system is he running? Good news is I think we had them 3-4 game, week 3-4 somewhere in there. So hopefully you got some good film on them and some tendencies. But man, I'm optimistic for Coach K. Man, I think he does a good job. He's got some talented kids. We were young last year, which was always good. In everything like anything else. How well does your quarterback play from week to week, play to play, and that can be the big difference. And that's in every level. That's at Pee-wees, that's at high school, that's at pro, college. How well does your quarterback play from play to play, week to week, and series to series even? And that's going to be a difference. And I'm optimistic, man. I think he's got a good thing going.
Dr. Kevin Dyson, thanks so much for doing this.
Man, absolutely, man. This was fun. I appreciate it. It's different being on this side of it for a change. I hadn't been on this side of things for a while. I've been on the other side of the mic interviewing people. Yeah. So this is fun, man. I hadn't done this in a long time.
Really enjoyed it. Really appreciate the time, man. 3 the Pro Way. 1045 The Zone Podcast Network. Rate, review, subscribe. We hope you do the same with this podcast as well. It's Inside Zone. Big thanks to Dr. Kevin Dyson, the principal at Centennial High School, for joining us today. I'm Lucas Panzica for Will Bowling, our producer. Say good day. Talk to you next time on Inside Zone on the 1045 The Zone Podcast Network.